Hey guys, it's Sam, and this is my spoiler-free review of The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue by Mackenzi Lee. This is the first book in what is now, I believe, going to just be a YA duology, but it can be read as a standalone. And this is a YA historical fiction. I believe it takes place in the 1700s sometime. And it follows our main character of Monty, and he is from a high-born family, and he is about to go on his tour, which is kind of like a gap year almost, where he's going to be touring Europe and going to all these grand places. And Monty's a bit of a rogue, and he really enjoys like drinking and gambling and flirting and all of this stuff. And he's going with his best friend Percy, who he's had a crush on for some time, but his father wants to kind of lay down the law and says he needs to get his act together, so he sends him with more of an official chaperone as well as his younger sister, and everything kind of goes from there. Monty gets into trouble and things proceed from there. So I actually listened to this on audiobook, and I highly recommend that. I've had this on physical copy for a little while. I wasn't sure which form I wanted to read it in. I ended up getting the audio, and the audiobook narrator is amazing. Apparently, people have told me that he's the actor that played young Tom Riddle in Harry Potter. His voice is great. He did a great job with this. So first off, I'm going to talk about the world building. Like I said, this is a historical fiction, and it also is kind of like a road trip book. So you're going to these different countries. They end up in Barcelona, they end up in France, they end up in a bunch of these different places, and you do get a sense of that. They talk about the architecture, they talk about the customs. In the audiobook, they do the accents, like everything like that. So that's really fun, that's really immersive. Although I do feel like there's times that this doesn't quite feel real and historical, but I think it's just because like you're in these like grand parties and all this stuff that's happening, and there is an element of fantasy-esque to it. It's not a fantasy book, but there is that kind of like, if things went a little bit differently, would this kind of be fantasy-ish, the way that some historical fiction is. Do you get what I mean? Like if something was a little bit different about history, then maybe history would have a tad of magic, and this has that element to it. Next, I'm going to talk about our characters. Monty, as a main character, is a lot of fun, but there are times that he sort of rubs me the wrong way. Like, he is a great character and that he's a lot of fun, he is very unapologetic, and he is constantly learning. So he understands throughout the story eventually, like people tell him, and it's in the narrative of like, you have a lot of privilege, whether it's because of your skin tone, whether it's because of your gender. His younger sister confronts him about the gender thing. His best friend Percy, who's biracial, confronts him about this, and he just is learning constantly. But there's this element to him that I just feel like he falls into trouble a lot. And I was kind of thinking throughout reading this, because I know this is a very well-loved book, I was like, if this character was a woman, would this book be as well-loved as it is? Interesting. So something about him just kind of like messing up and having to be saved by all these different people all the time kind of started to grate on my nerves. He learns, he apologizes, that's fantastic, but it's still like, you always have to see people from marginalized groups teaching men that are privileged about things, and it's not like he doesn't have a hard life, because there's parts about his life that you discover that are very difficult, but it just rubbed me the wrong way at times. I still liked him as a character, he's still a lot of fun, but I wasn't expecting there to be that much of him kind of like bumbling through the story, which in a way is kind of like fun and funny, but in other ways it's kind of grating. Monty does have some symptoms of PTSD also from his childhood, and I think were covered really well in here. One thing I really loved about this is that Monty is very proudly bisexual. Like I said, he has a crush on his best friend, who is a male. He also talks about having different trysts with women and men and equally, and he just kind of loves everybody. And he's really not apologetic about that, and I really love that about him. There's also some hints that maybe there's some different sexuality things going on with some of the other characters, but that might be revealed more in book 2, because book 2 follows his sister. And I'm kind of intrigued about that. I don't follow the author enough around to see if maybe she's already mentioned that before in passing. Maybe someone will tell me down below in the comments if that's true, but that's really good. And I just liked the side characters a lot. I liked his sister. His sister is smart and witty and almost like a Hermione-esque character to me, so I really enjoyed her. I also really enjoyed Percy, his best friend, how they put him in his place. There's also a lot of really interesting side characters. They run in with some pirates at one point. They run into like sort of like antique dealers. Like all of these people are very interesting, and they make for really fun side characters as well. Lastly, we'll talk about the plot. This is a very fun, fast-paced story. It's constantly going. They're constantly getting into trouble, like I said, and there is that element of extra-ness to it as well, as far as what ends up happening with major points of the plot, and that is all really interesting. I do find, again, kind of attached to how Monty was constantly getting in trouble, that I did find myself a little bit exhausted, where it's like, you know, I know that he's doing something stupid and he's about to get in trouble again, and that's kind of where it started to grate on me plot-wise. I still was very engaged with it, I still continued to listen to it, I still wanted to know what was going on, but it just kind of got a little bit exhausting, where I'm like, you're gonna keep doing this against everyone's better advice and against everyone's better judgment. You're just gonna keep being this way. So that was a little bit frustrating. So overall, this was really fun and unexpected. I didn't really have any expectations going into it, and I really enjoyed listening to audio. So if you're interested in reading this, I would recommend getting the audiobook. And I do plan on continuing the duology with the second book that follows his sister, I believe coming out in the fall, coming out in the future sometime. I gave The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue 4.5 out of 5 stars. So comment down below and let me know what you thought of The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see all of you guys soon. Bye.